As you can see, that's all nice and clean. The glass is clean. That case is ready for reassembly. Still got to deal with a few other bits and pieces, of course, like the blades and this retainer. The retainer looks very oily to me. I expect that that rainbow coloration I can see is due to oil, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'll get into that with a bit of naphtha and we'll see if it makes any difference. Well, there's a lot of dirt coming off there. Not a great colour change though. Oh, it's sort of more a dark grey and less of the purple. So it's making some impression. Well, I'll just continue cleaning that. This piece here, this is the piece that adjusts the positions of the blades. That's very bent. It's also covered in grease. That'll certainly need to be dealt to. That shouldn't be that shape at all. And the blades themselves look quite good here. There's certainly some discrepancies in terms of the manufacturing of these things. You'll see that some of them have got odd notches out of the ends. They don't seem to all match the same. Basically they all function the same, but why some should have little notches in the ends and some without, or this one here's got a notch in the opposite end, I think that's just probably rough manufacturing techniques. It may be that the way they were punched out of a sheet, they were sitting funny. I don't know. I don't know why they do that. Honestly, doesn't make any sense to me. But I'll clean those blades. They're not bad, a little bit oily, but they're otherwise in good condition. And I'll just clean those with some naphtha and a cotton bud. But this plate here, this is quite buckled up. I think you can see how much it's out of shape there. That'll certainly need to be straightened up and cleaned. But naphtha should do the job for cleaning. Time to assemble the diaphragm. I've got the blades all cleaned here. Here is our plate. Here's the shutter. The plate sits like that on the shutter, therefore we want it to sit that way. Okay, so the round hole, that's at the top on the shutter, and I've got all my blades and these are all being cleaned. So now all I have to do is stack them in. And you just go around. Note which way on they go. This cutaway section we're installing onto the plate. Make sure you put them all on the same way. And you can see I'm using a toothpick here to help me position those blades. And my assembly jig there is made up out of two 1/2 inch drive sockets. I think I've got a 10mm socket in the centre and it's resting on a larger one, a 27mm socket, and I've just got a square wooden peg connecting the two up. And it does a marvellous job for assembling things like this. It does such a wonderful job. I've never had any enthusiasm in the slightest to make a special tool to do the same job, because this works great. So as you can see, we're just putting the blades one on top of the other until you get to the last few blades. It's just moved, just get it seated. You have to pull back the first blades so that you can insert the last few blades, because all of these blades are interleaved. Shutter blades are not interleaved, they just stack one on top of the other. So with shutter blades, there's a first blade and a last blade. With diaphragm blades, the blades are interleaved. Each blade is on top of the next blade at one end and under the next blade at the other end. So there's no first and last, except where you happen to start putting them in. Functionally, they're all the same. Okay, so I've got all my blades in there. Now I've got to lift these blades up over the top of those blades without disturbing anything. And I'm swinging the blades in towards the centre so that they're all positioned tidily. Now I'm taking note of where I've got things here. I've got a pencil mark here and here, and I know that that's where my tabs on my bracket need to go. So I've got to get this seated over those pins. Inevitably some of them don't want to go and they'll need to be nudged into position. That is quite normal, and you just take it in stride. So this blade here, that stud's not dropped into the slot yet. There it does. I'll just rotate this so I get to the other ones. If I give this a bit of a wriggle, they might fall into place. Here. All of those pins are now sticking up through that plate. I've got my circular hole here. That's got to line up with this circular hole in the plate here. So if I lower the case over the top, first I've got to get rid of that post because it's going to be in the way, because these shutters, not only have I got the lens in the back, but even if I'd taken the lens out, the hole wouldn't be big enough diameter. So I can lower this case over there like that. Holding this firmly between my fingers, I can flip it upside down, lift it off, put that underneath, and I'm just checking to make sure that the pins are still sitting where they should be. And we have a single screw that holds this plate down. And it was in this position, I believe. There'll only be one threaded hole there, so this is probably it. Some Gauthier shutters, in fact quite a few, use two screws, one opposite the other. This one doesn't, and there's nowhere for the screw to go. Now I'm just holding this plate down. I can see that this rivet here is not sitting in its hole. Just manoeuvring that with the tip of my screwdriver. There it is, it's good now. Tighten that screw up. That's all looking good. I'll put my jig back on there and flip this over. Here you can see the two tabs at the back, and the diaphragm should close as I swing that around. That looks pretty good, so I'll line that back up with the hole in the mechanism plate, which was where? So I can put my screws through. There, I think. This is the setting lever. And the setting lever actually went that way up, from memory. Let's flip this back the other way. I'll put my setting lever on underneath. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's put that there on the jig. And I've got to line up the holes in the setting lever with those two forks on that setting plate. And it happens to be, it's just there. So if I take my two shoulder screws, I can get one in here, and one on the opposite side, working through this hole in the cover plate. There's only a very small amount of thread on those screws. Okay, so that's done. Now we have our setting lever in place. We should be able to open and close the diaphragm. And the opening's nice and round, and the action's nice and smooth. So that part's done. And I'll just check that those two screws are as tight as I want them to be. And we can put this to one side. You'll see that I've cleaned the glass while I've been at this. The next task. Well, here's our mechanism plate, which is all clean, reassembled and ready to go. So I've got this, I haven't got it in the cocked position yet, but I will shortly. I'll bring this into the cocked position. I'll hold back this tab, tip of my tweezers, and pull this arm this way, which is the blade's open position. And we can put the shutter blades in place. Now, I've got marks on my plate here, so I can see where they go. There's one. Two. Now three, you have to get this tucked in under this. There's a slot in the brass bush here, and you've got to get the end of the blade tucked in underneath that. It's three. Four. There's a bit of fluff on that. Let's get rid of that. And five. Blade number 5 sits on top of blade numbers 4 and 1. It sits on the top. The blades are stacked one on top of each other. Okay, so we've got our blades in the open position sitting on the mechanism plate. Now we've got to get the case fitted over the top. Now our obstruction here is this pin for the flash contact, which sticks out in the case. Now you're stuck with that, you've really got to work around it, there's no other option. So here I've just got to wriggle this into the case. So I'll back you up a bit so there's more space to see what I'm doing, and we'll get into it. What I've got to do is get the edge of this mechanism plate under that pin there and lower everything into place, getting it over this post and over that lever, all at the same time. I think that was it. Alright, let's get a screw into the case. We know one of the screws is longer than the others. I think it's one of those two, so I'm putting one of the short screws in this position. Put one more screw over here, and if I've made a mistake and put the short screw where a long screw should be, well, there's plenty of opportunity to put that right. Let's flip this over. Now if I push this back, the blade should close. So that's all looking good. I think the shutter's cocked, so if I fired it, the blade should open on B, and then as I release this, they should close again. So that's all moving smoothly. That looks good. Now my long screw wants to be in this position here. That's because it holds back the tail of that detent spring that I mentioned earlier. Rotate this to expose the fourth hole. Where is it? There. And with all the screws in position, since I've already checked that the blade's open and closed smoothly, I can just tighten these screws up. And that's the base part of the shutter all finished. I'll cock the shutter, release it. Now if I held back the B position here, the shutter would just fire open. It would just at its fastest possible speed. Okay, I've got a centre element to put in here, but I'm not putting in it just at the moment, because as soon as I put it in there I have no more access to clean that rear glass if I decide there's a piece of dust or something in there I want to see the back of. So that's all looking good. That detent spring I mentioned, let's put that in place. The detent spring is this thing. I'll zoom you in a little bit. That detent spring goes over the head of this screw. It goes this way, and the elbow on it hooks around that long screw that we brought through the case, like that. The long end of the spring comes behind this post on the blade actuating ring, and its job is to tension the mechanism plate in the closed, well, tension the blade actuating ring in the closed position. Let's cock the shutter, and there's no tendency for these blades to open until they're pushed by the movement of this ring. This is the B lever dropping into position here. As I release the shutter release lever here, the B lever is lifted out of contact with the cam and allows it to continue its action and close the blades. Alright, that went pretty smoothly. I'll I've got to clean up a few more things before we get any further down the track. Okay, I'll carry on with the reassembly here. Got our flash contact. This thing. It's got a little stud on the bottom which locates in a hole just in here. And the bright hole here is where the screw goes through. So I'll see if I can get this seated in place. Getting that tiny stud seated in the hole is often the trickiest bit. That was it, just pressed in. Okay, so on top of that we want the little barrel shaped standoff or spacer, and on top of that we want this piece. A little tab on the side of this points towards the edge of the case. Or points to this way. It sits over the top of the post there, and then we've got the screw that goes through there. It's a brass shoulder screw. And you want to be sure that the shoulder of the screw seats correctly into that bracket so that that little bracket is free to move on it. Just check that that moves freely. It does. Nip that screw down, check again. There's a rattle in that bracket, it means it's free on that post. So that's that part. And this piece, basically when the shutter fires, which we can do, when the shutter's released, this flash contact hits that pin. It's contacting that now. This of course is open on B at the moment. When I release this, that contact will open back up. What it should have done, let's check that action. Yep, that's better. That didn't release there. That suggests that this arm is bent slightly. And before I deal with that, I'm going to put the pin back into this shaft at the back. Getting this thing started is always a trial. Doesn't want to start on that side. The ends of the pin is probably slightly damaged. I may have to take the burr off one end. Okay, that's started. Now I'll use a pair of pliers to squeeze that into position. I've got a pair of pliers here with the end notched out. It'll allow that pin to travel through. See if we can do that. It's almost centered. Yeah, that'll do. That's close enough. Now putting that pin back in allows me to use this tool to cock the shutter, because otherwise it's awkward. Okay, let me check the action of that B lever again. I suspect the end of that's slightly bent because it doesn't want to release when this reaches the end of its travel. Yeah, it's just releasing. It's a bit reluctant. Oh, I just bent that, and I probably bent that too far. It works nicely, so I'm inclined to leave that exactly where it is, rather than risk breaking that thing off by trying to square it back up. Yeah, that B lever is working nicely now. Basically it was too tight at this point, bent too far this way, and it was locking on that tab and failing to release from it. But now it moves nicely, so we'll leave that exactly as it is. Things are working well, don't start altering them after that. Right, next up I think we need to deal with the speed trains. Well, here's our retard gear train, and it's moving freely enough here, but we know that the thing was sticking earlier, so what I'm going to do is put that in some naphtha in this jar, and then I'll work that mechanism multiple times to flush out that any dust and rubbish that's in there. You can put them in the ultrasonic cleaner and do the same thing, but let's see if we can do it this way today. Just get that flipped over where I can get at it. Just working that mechanism backwards and forwards to flush out any oil and dust that's in the mechanism, and I'll blow that out with my blower. And it's important to blow out the naphtha afterwards, because then the naphtha will take with it any freight of oil or dust that's picked up. And if you just simply leave it there for the naphtha to evaporate, once it's evaporated, it will leave the dust and oil behind, pretty much where it started off. So let's just check the action. Oh yeah, that's moving very freely now. That's ideal. Now this retard gear train doesn't have the pallets on it for the very slow speeds. So this shutter only goes down to a 25th of a second. I think, is it a 25th or a 30th? 25th. So it lacks the very slow speeds that you'd get with a shutter that runs down to 1 second. So it's nice and simple. And that's looking nice and clean. So that I'll lubricate with a bit of graphite powder before I put it in place in the shutter. And here is the self-timer. And these are a bit trickier to deal with. Where's our release? Right here. Okay. I can see some rubbish on here. Looks like dried grease or something. I just want to run this thing down manually, but it doesn't want to go for me. I'll just give that a soak in the ultrasonic, I think. Now when you do one of these, then after 99 times out of 100, that little red paint blob there will dissolve and fall out. I'm just going to clean this in the ultrasonic cleaner. Back shortly.